Hey there, Evan Hirsch here. Welcome back to the Energy MD podcast, where we help you resolve your long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome naturally so that you can get back to living your best life. So, have you done a parasite cleanse previously and you want to know why you haven't gotten better? Let's dive in and talk about why that might be the case. So, a lot of people who have chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID have parasite issues. And you don't just get parasites from being outside of the US, you can get them even being here in the States. Okay, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that you have a certain exposure, but then your immune system is dysfunctional and doesn't allow you to get rid of that particular infection. And parasites can come in a lot of different forms. The definition of a parasite is basically just an infection that is feeding off of the host. And it's not a symbiotic relationship. It's not a friendly. It's actually utilizing our machinery and utilizing what we're doing as humans in order to, and it ends up compromising the way that we live and the way that we function. And there can be very large parasites like tapeworms and whipworms and stuff like that. And there can be smaller parasites like toxoplasmosis or even some of the Lyme co-infections. So there can be the ones that are intracellular inside the cell and the ones that are outside the cell. So it's important to note that the majority of people who are walking around have parasites, but not everybody has symptoms from parasites. And so if you have seen things online where they're talking about parasites are entirely your issue, anytime you see anything where somebody is saying that you need to put your eggs all in one basket to heal a complex chronic disease, you need to be really skeptical. Because in my experience over the last decade, I have found that people with long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome have all of the toxic five present, and that is the reason why their body is in such a dysfunctional state. The toxic five include a combination of heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, and nervous system dysfunction. And I'm talking about all the heavy metals, all the chemicals, all the molds, all the different infections, including parasites, and then also the nervous system dysfunction or central nervous system or brain dysfunction. So important to note that that's a lot of different causes. And so, but the thing is that you can't get to the place of where you are by having chronic fatigue, post-exertional malaise, body pain, hard time sleeping, brain fog, if you don't have all of these different causes. Generally, there is a straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak, where you feel like you were fine until something happened. Maybe you got a viral illness, maybe you got a vaccination, maybe you had some sort of trigger, maybe you had mold exposure, maybe you traveled to a third world country and had diarrhea, which could be parasites. So generally, there's some sort of trigger, but it doesn't happen in isolation. It needs to be taken in context, which is that there were already toxic five that were present that set the stage. And so then that trigger becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Why do some people get chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID and other people don't? It's really because of the toxic five that are present. And you might have felt fine. You might have been training for a marathon, thought there were no problems, but then all of a sudden you get a virus since 2020 and now you have a big issue, right? And so really important to note that all of these have to be addressed. So if you're going to do a parasite cleanse of some sort, oftentimes that's going to include a number of different herbs that are going to kill the parasites, cause them to be paralyzed, and then hoping that they're going to pass. Oftentimes, sometimes you're going to get better to a certain degree, but then you plateau. And generally, you're not going to get all the way better unless that's really the major problem that you have. Some of the concerns with doing a parasite cleanse include the fact that when you are killing a parasite is really a reservoir and it holds the other toxic four inside of itself most of the time. So that means that it has heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and other infections inside. And so when you kill it, it can explode and release these toxins. And consequently, unless you have things, unless you're taking supplements that are going to bind up these heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and kill infections when the parasite explodes, you're going to feel worse. And oftentimes those different components, those toxins and infections can then go into different parts of the body, cause inflammation, and then you might be left in a worse state. And that's really just not the goal. We want to get you better. We don't want you to be worse, right? So I do believe that all of those things, you have to have some coverage of the heavy metals, chemicals, molds, and infections before you start going after the parasites. But parasites do need to be addressed as part of a complete program. And that's really why people come to see us, is because they're tired of addressing one thing at a time and they want to address all the toxic five at a rate that their bodies can tolerate. Because that's pretty much what I have found to be most successful over time. We don't really even test anymore because I've seen so many people over the last decade with chronic fatigue syndrome and now with long COVID the last couple of years, they all end up having all of the heavy metals, all the chemicals, all the molds, all the infections that end up coming out over the course of a 12-month period of time. And so it's really important to make sure that you're addressing all these things, leaving no stone unturned so that you can be successful. Because if you're like so many of the people we speak with, it just makes sense to them that if we're going to address 99% of all the potential causes, that the likelihood of success goes through the roof, right? Because I've been fooled by laboratory testing. Laboratory testing is highly imperfect, and I've done it before where, I'm testing for molds and mycotoxins and nothing shows up. And then 12 months later, we do a repeat test because we're not getting this person all the way better. And we're finding that, oh my gosh, they've got mycotoxins. And it's just because the urine test for these heavy metals and chemicals and molds are really a test of excretion, your ability to get these toxins out of your body. They're not a test of your total body burden. So really important to not get fooled by laboratory testing, and any provider who is treating you based on laboratory testing is going to be leaving something on the table, is going to be missing something. And the way that you get better is by addressing everything. And the way that you know that you're not better, or if you're missing something, you're 9 times out of 10 not going to get completely better. Okay. And it doesn't cost you any more or take any more time to address all of these different causes. It is definitely worth it to go ahead and proceed and make sure that they're all addressed. So those are my thoughts on a parasite cleanse. Can be very helpful, but there definitely are some caveats. If you start to feel worse, don't push through. You want to make sure that you're not having die off. You want to make sure that you're not feeling worse as going through that process. But parasites do need to be addressed, but they need to be addressed in the context of all of the other toxic five. And then they also have to be addressed at a rate that your body can tolerate so that you are going to be most successful. All right, hope that was helpful for you. If you are interested in learning more about what we offer, go ahead and click the link below, and you can check out my latest masterclass or an interview that I did recently where I go deeper into my philosophy of care. And then you can get on a free call with me to see if we're a good fit to work together. And on this call, essentially, I'm looking for ways why we shouldn't work together. I want to make sure that the people who join our program are those who are going to be successful. So I'm going to have you fill out a form and I'm going to ask you some questions to make sure that we are, in fact, a good fit for each other. But if you are the kind of person who is going to implement, then we should have a conversation, because the only people who don't get better in our program are people who do not implement. And if you don't believe me, ask the 100 plus testimonials that we have on our website at energymdmethod.com/results. So I'm very proud of those. We work hard for the people that we work with, and we stand with a lot of integrity, and we're doing our best that we can to help people with long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome. So if you want to check us out, we'd be honored to work with you. All right. Thanks for paying attention, and I'll see you in the next episode. Oh, and don't forget, if you learned something here today, give it a thumbs up and hit the button to subscribe so this can go out to more people who really need this information. It's really it's very helpful for the YouTube algorithm, and we really appreciate the support. All right. Have an amazing day. I hope you learned something on today's podcast. If you did, please share it with your friends and family and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. It's really helpful for getting this information out to more people who desperately need it. Sharing all the experts I know and love and the powerful tips I have is one of my absolute favorite things to do. Thanks for being part of my community. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. It is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. Thanks for listening, and have an amazing day.